Hey guys, this is Ross with Hamil Bro Studios, and we are here doing, actually today is kind of audio day for reviews and tutorials and kind of things, so that's why I've got the same clothes on in every video. I don't wear them, I love Blue Shape, but not enough to wear their shirt every day because I can't stand the smell. But anyway, that's why all of these different reviews, I'm dressed the same because we're shooting it all on the same day. Anyway, that's not why we're here. We are here to talk about one of our new favorite toys. So, flashback about month and a half, 2 months, sometime in April. I don't remember when because time's just flown by, but Jacob and I got the chance to go to NAB, which is the National Association of Broadcasters. It's a huge trade show in Vegas, and we had the opportunity to meet some really, really cool people while we're there. None of the least, I think that's the way you say that, but yeah, one of the coolest ones we got to meet was this company, Tentacle Sync. So you're probably sitting there going, what do octopuses have to do with video? And I don't have a good answer for that, except their product is killer. So if you're like us, we're a two-man production company, and we hire in crew from time to time, but fairly small operation, and the less work we can do in production and in post, the better. It saves us money, saves us time, helps maintain good relationships with clients. So what does all that have to do with this? Well, it's this little guy right here. I know, right? How's this saving me money? Well, this is a Tentacle Sync unit, and what they do is they're a timecode generating unit. So ideally, what you would do is you'd have multiples of these, and you connect them all together. You tell it, say this one's the master, and you tell all the other ones to sync up with this, and then you put them on all your devices. But more on that in a minute. So when we were at NAB, we went to the Tentacle Sync booth, and we were gushing over the newest versions, the Tentacle Sync E series. And, for some reason at this point, we hadn't liked them on Instagram. So we were standing there. Jacob gets out his phone, finds him on Instagram, taps it, and he's like, oh, hey, look at that. We're the 1,000th follower on Instagram. And they went nuts. They were excited. We were excited. I'm sure somebody somewhere in Vegas got out champagne at that exact same moment. And so, everybody was celebrating. And they actually, they gave us a unit as a gift for being their 1,000th follower because the stars aligned and we just happened to be standing in front of them when it happened. So we got a Tentacle Sync unit from Tentacle Sync at the NAB show. So it was a really, really cool day. So let's talk about, what the purpose of this unit is. So when it comes to, cameras and audio and multiple cameras and multiple audio recorders, you want to have timecode on set. And basically you have one master clock that tells everything else that this is an absolute time. That way, when you get everything back in the computer, you just hit a button and it synchronizes everything up, and you don't have to use something like the Premiere syncing tool or Davinci Resolve syncing tool to waveform or something like Pluralize. While those tools are great, they're not 100% effective, especially if you have really, really bad camera audio or you have two microphones in one recorder and one's really far away and there's enough of a delay that it confuses the software. It'll just go, not going to sync it. And so that's what timecode does. It doesn't matter how far your camera is away, it's going to sync to an absolute timecode. So the way you use these things is, like I said earlier, you set one as the master, and then using, let me see, where are the cables? Actually, I think Jacob has one of the cables, but basically it's a headphone to headphone adapter, the 3.5 millimeter, like this. Oh, here we go. So you use these, you jump them together, and you basically sync all the units off of whichever you designate to be your master unit, and they keep time code. I think the drift on it's very minimal. They claim that it's one frame within 24 hours, which it's pretty good. I would say if you're not resetting your sync every 24 hours, then A, you're probably a zombie because you've been working way too long, and B, you're insane. So accurate within one frame every 24 hours. So on the unit itself, let's just kind of look at it. You've got, and normally I wouldn't have this cable plugged in, but we've got an extension running so that I'm actually syncing the audio to the recorder via this timecode. And I've got just an extension cable running because it's just a headphone jack. And so you have, on the front here, have their cool little octopus logo, is Tentacle Sync. On the top, you have a reference microphone. That's literally all it is. I wouldn't try to record anything with this because it's not for recording audio for use in your post-production beyond just trying to get a reference signal if something goes haywire. On this side, you've got, I believe this is the battery indicator, the charging indicator, and you've got a USB-C plug-in on it, which, thank God for USB-C. If you remember, ever since USB came into the world, there's only one way to plug in a USB, and it takes 3 tries, because you plug it in, it doesn't work, you turn it over, try plugging it again, still doesn't work, and you turn it back over, and it goes in. I don't know how the physics of that work, but some guy's laughing at us all right now because he's been tricking us for years. With USB-C, however, it's the same both ways. Does not matter how you plug it in. You can flip it over. It works both ways, kind of like the lightning cable on an iOS device. So on this side, we have the power button and the sync button. So push and hold it to turn it on, or turn it off, as the case may be. You have to push and hold until all the lights shut off to make sure the power's off. And I believe you also use this to sync between units. Don't quote me on that 100%. I know that was how it was on the older units, but on these, I'm not so sure because we only have one. Look up their tutorials. They're great and they explain everything. On this side, you have one light that's a Bluetooth indicator, which, this thing runs Bluetooth. You can monitor it from however many devices you want on set. And then you also have a timecode indicator. So if it's flashing green, this is the master. If it's flashing red, I believe it's the slave. Or if it's solid, I don't remember. Again, watch the tutorials that they provide because they'll tell you everything you want to know. So let's look at some other things. What comes with it? Well, one, you get a charging cable, which is USB Type A on one end and USB-C on the other end. I believe you could charge this off of, if you have an iPhone box or something. I want to think that it's the 0.5 watts something. I wouldn't use an iPad box to charge this because you'll probably fry the battery, or just plug it into a computer. The other thing that this does is, obviously you can plug it into a computer, and if you have the Tentacle Sync software, either on Mac or PC, 2 different softwares, we'll get into that later, but at least on the Windows version, you have to have this unit plugged into your computer to unlock the software. This is kind of like a Davinci Resolve dongle in that this is how you unlock the software. So you get a charging cable. You get a 3.5 to 3.5 stereo TRS cable, and this is super handy because this allows you to sync this device with units that don't natively take timecode. So let's say you've got a Canon or a Sony DSLR or Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, something that doesn't natively have a timecode input like your Ursa Mini or a Red or something like that. So this just runs from your Tentacle Sync into the microphone input, your 3.5 microphone input on whatever device, and you get sync via this cable. Also, you get a little baggie. Has some stickers on it. If you're like us, we like to put stickers on everything. Pretty soon, I think we're going to start getting tattoos for all of the gear we use, but for now, stickers. So you get stickers, and then you have these Velcro strips, which brings me back to the unit. On the back side, it actually has the latch. I think it's latch and hook or whatever. It's the pokey side of Velcro. And so you can mount this on anything, and they send you a stack of these little soft side, the fabric side of the Velcro strips, along with these little rubber bands, so you can identify your different tentacle syncs just by color by looking at them. So that's really, really cool. So the other thing that comes with it is this bag, and I don't remember which bag comes with it because when we were at NAB, we got a ton of stuff from these guys. They were giving away a ton of stuff. So I think this is the bag that came with it though, which is really cool because if you look at it, it's got 2 zippers and it's got 2 sides. It's got a divider pocket in it. So you could put all your cables and your unit in one side, and then your Velcro and your little rubber bands, all that stuff on the other side. So really, really cool stuff. The other thing that you'll get is this Tentacle Sync quick start guide. So there you go for the B camera. So, okay, so Tentacle Sync launched in 2015. Didn't know that, but I've been following them since they were on Indiegogo, and I've been dying to get my hands on these units, and we finally did. So that's pretty much, I think, everything that comes with the unit if you just buy the unit by itself. So if you're like us and you need some other connection for your camera, like we primarily shoot on a Blackmagic Ursa Mini 4.6, and it takes a BNC connector for the timecode, or SDI for you video guys. You can order these along with it, and I think they're a little pricey on the cables, but they're not cheap cables. Like this is a really, really, it feels like a very heavy duty cable. It's nice and limber, but it's not so loose that I'm afraid I'm going to break it. Obviously the connection, that's a metal connector, so you're not going to break this guy. This end, obviously metal, but they ended up letting us take one of these, and they also make one that's a right angle, which I'm actually using on our Zoom F4 right now to receive the timecode. So you can order extra cables, and they've got cables for just about any camera that you have. Go to the website, and you can see all sorts of stuff that they've got. So now for some of the cool stuff. While we were there at NAB, at their booth, they gave us a ton of stuff. So, like I said, we're looking at getting tattoos. Well, if you don't want to go get one permanently, they'll give you one that you can just wear for a few days and until you're tired of having a Tentacle Sync tattoo on you. My 6-year-old loved his, so he wore it until it just wore off. Patches. If you're cool and you get patches put on your shirts or, your gear bags or whatever, you get a really cool little Tentacle Sync badge. Down here, let me know when you're on it, Jacob. Good. Down here, we have they gave away stickers, which is fun. You've got your octopus, your Octopus AC who's doing Slate, or I guess that's first AC, second AC. Depending on the size of your production, might be the director doing Slate, but you got your Octopus run the Slate, Octopus eating popcorn. Obviously, you have your boom operator, Tentacle guy, your director. He likes to listen to music in headphones, and a couple of popcorn eating octopuses. If you didn't know they eat popcorn, they like it with butter and a little bit of ink. So beyond that, they gave us these really cool little pins that are pretty much the same designs as the stickers, but they're fun. Put those on your gear bags. If your sound guy's asleep, open up the back and poke him with it. It'll wake him up. So you have a lot of different options for what you can use these pins for. One thing that I forgot to mention while I was going through the included gear was this little guy right here. And what this is a clip. As you can see, they made all the plugs that go into the Tentacle right angle, so you can slip this clip on right here and it locks it in place. Now, obviously I don't have a right angle on here right now, otherwise I could just lock this in place because I'm extending the signal out to be able to demonstrate it. But they have a lock on the back of it, so if the unit falls off and it catches the cable or whatever, it's still not gonna break loose unless you really, really tug on it. So if you're like me, you have one of these. It's a smartphone, for those of you who don't know what this is, but this is specifically an iPhone with the lightning port on it. And this thing has become a major on-set tool for me. I've got microphones that plug into this. I've got a light meter that plugs in, and with the Tentacle Sync, it turned this into an extra recorder to have on set. So I've got, and tell me if you get there? Okay, so I've got, this extra screen, or bin, as I would call it, for my film and audio stuff, all my apps that I use. And if you look right here, you see a few different apps. Obviously, one has this Tentacle logo on it. So let me turn that back on. We open that up. So once I'm in the Tentacle Setup app, it's the one that has this little guy on it that has the logo on it. It'll list all of your Tentacle devices. It'll show you the signal, it'll show you what the frame rate is and how much battery it has. These are supposed to have a 35-hour battery on them, so that's a pretty good battery life. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one. Select. Really? There we go. Okay. So, got calluses on my fingers. Sometimes it doesn't pick up very quickly. So, as you can see at the top, it's got your device name and it's showing you what the active time code is on it. And I believe if it's green, that means it's the master clock. Again, if it's red, I think it's slave, but don't quote me on that. Next down, we have our battery level. So it gives you an active display on how much battery life is left. Right here, you have your output volume, so you can either go mic level or line level depending on how this is plugged into your devices, or what device it's plugged into. Go ahead and turn this back on. And then down here you have several standard time codes that you can select from. So right now I've got ours set to 2398 or 23976 if you're super picky. You got 24 even, 25 even, 2997, 2997 drop frame, and 30. I don't know if there's a plan to add 50, 60, anything like that to it, but anything's possible. So scoot this up, and now we've got auto power off time. So if you want to, depending on how strapped you are for crew members, if you don't remember to turn these things off, or you just don't want to fuss with having to remember, you can set it to either 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, or 12 hours. We have ours set to 4 right now because generally we aren't doing 4-hour takes, and we'll check all this stuff before we roll again, after a long break. Next down you have firmware. Shows you what firmware version you're on. It gives you a serial number, the date it was calibrated, RTC time, and then this down here, I don't know why this is giving me trouble, but you have user bits, you have custom user bits. And let me pull this back up again. Man alive. Then you can set your date and time. My phone does not like this for some reason. So this might be an issue. See if I can weasel my way up here. Okay, if I can hold this, you can see here that you can set a date format. So depending on what part of the world you're in, different countries use different date formats, so you can set that. I'm going to let go of this because that's making my finger tired. Something I missed here was the auto mic level enabled. So that means that the reference microphone on the unit itself will actually, it'll just have kind of an automatic gain thing going. So that is this app. So let's go out of here, then go to the next one, which is called Timebar. And let's go back and select a Tentacle, and it just gives you a running time code. So while this isn't as, it's not as great as having a slate on set in a pinch, you can still set all of your devices that aren't receiving a Tentacle signal. You just shoot this, figure out a good frame, and match the time code to it in post. So, like I said, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. So let's take a look at the last bit of software that they offer, and we're going to talk about exactly how cool this thing is. Last but certainly not least is my favorite app out of the Tentacle app suite, if you want to call it that, for iOS. It's what they have aptly named Recorder. As you can see, it's picking up real-time-ish waveforms, and right now I've got my Shure Motive MV88 microphone plugged in. It's a great microphone. I'll tell you more about that in the review of the microphone itself. But right now I've got the Tentacle Recorder app is actually using this microphone for pickup. And the cool thing is as you can see down here on it, you actually have time code. So this embeds time code into your audio files from this app, so you can sync it in post. And so I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to start recording here. And let's see if this, it doesn't turn upside down, so you're just going to have to bear with me while I speak into this microphone. So one of the cool things about this is obviously I have to go into the Shure app to adjust what kind of microphone pattern this is, and any other microphone, deep kind of settings that you want to use. But you do have a gain here. So typically on this microphone I have to just keep it up all the way because it's not super strong. But go ahead and stop, and it gives you a runtime. Let's look at the next window, and here we have all of our recorded media. Shows you a waveform. You can play it back. Up here it tells you what the title is for the selected file. It gives you I'll play that back. So it shows you stereo, 48K, 24-bit, 12 megabytes. It shows you how large the file is that you recorded, and it gives you time code, the starting time code, and it tells you what frame rate you're recording at. So down here, obviously, you have your list of recorded media. Now let's jump into the next page, which is the settings page, and you have your project name, which you can adjust. The last thing I recorded on here was a syncing issue with Davinci Resolve 15, beta 3 or beta 4. I don't remember, but that's why that's named that. Here you can set your bit depth, which you should always be recording at 24 no matter what. Just do it, set it, leave it. Don't ever worry about it again. Next down, you have your recording sample rate. You can select 441 if you're doing music that's going to go out to CD or a digital format, or you can go 48K for cinema or film. And next you have your input monitoring. So if you've got headphones, you want to plug them in, you can listen back. There's a bit of a delay just because of everything getting processed through the iOS, and before it hits the microphone, goes in, gets processed, and then goes straight into your ears. So there's a bit of a delay, and it can sound kind of funky. But it's nice to have a monitor so you can make sure you're not clipping. Next, you have acknowledgements, and then your software version. So let's just click out of there, and you go back to do not show again. You got 3 windows. It's really easy to operate. So now let's talk about how you deal with all of this in post, how you handle it. So going to jump over to a screen cap and let's talk about software. For the sake of example here, I am actually recording into the Shure Motive MV88 microphone on my iPhone, and it's running into the Tentacle app. And as you can see, it is going to sync seamlessly once we get into Resolve, which is where I'm going to do all this. But, for the sake of another example, let's just say that you don't have an iOS microphone and you don't have a way to connect Bluetooth to your Tentacle, which is on top of our T3i right now. I chose to use the T3i because it doesn't have any timecode whatsoever. Every clip starts with a 0 timecode, making timecode on it virtually useless. But thanks to Tentacle, it's not so much anymore on the useless spectrum. So, but let's say that you don't have something like this. Right here, I've got my Zoom F4, and I'm running a Rode link into it. And this is all getting synced as well. And the reason is I was able to jam the Tentacle Sync off of the F4, so use the F4's internal time clock to generate a signal that goes into the Tentacle Sync, and the Tentacle latches onto that, and then you Velcro it onto your camera, and it's good. So now let's take a look at the software and get all of this synced up. As we just saw in our DSLR example, we had multiple clips from multiple sources, some with timecode, some without, but they typically they all synced up really, really well. One thing that I have noticed with the Tentacle app is when you're stacking that audio against reference audio or like the Zoom F4, it is a little bit behind, which is kind of interesting because when you listen back to the audio on your headphones as you're recording it, it also has a little bit of a delay to it. So you will have to compensate for that if you record to the app. But for general use, if you're just using that audio and covering up your camera audio with it, it's so close that nobody's going to notice. But if you're syncing that to other things, then I would definitely take the time to sync all that up, make it sound pretty, and keep going. But let's move on. If you look here, I've got my example footage that we just watched. It's kind of like example inception. It's an example inside an example. But I've got my T3i footage right here, and I've got my F4 audio right here, and I need to get the audio off of my iPhone. How do I do that? Well, it's pretty simple. Assuming, if you have an iPhone, let's assume that you have iTunes on your computer, and this process should be the same on Windows as it is in the Mac world, but right now we're on Windows. So in iTunes, you click on this icon that represents your phone, and it takes you to the very similar iTunes windows within your phone. But we go down here, right here to File Sharing. I'm going to scroll down to the Recorder app, and I do find this a little bit irritating, so I would love it if iTunes would make these two windows scroll independently of each other, but it is what it is. So I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and right here, Tentacle DSLR example 000000 infinity. Just take that and drag it into your working folder. Typically, I would have this in a footage folder, in both of these in a production audio folder, that are also in separate folders for each of the recorders, but as small as this example is, I'm not going to mess with that right now. And I'm going to go into Davinci Resolve because that is my preferred. It's my preferred way of dealing with this stuff. And I'm going to just drag all of these into my master. And you're probably sitting here wondering, what was that weird sound? Well, let's go take a look. And I'm gonna pull this down just a little bit so we don't damage your earballs. So let's open up this footage of me picking my nose or scratching, or I don't know what I was doing there, but let's give this a listen. Bring this up just a little bit. So you hear that god-awful noise on the left, and you can kind of hear some reference audio on the right. That noise on the left is your timecode. It's awful, but it's there. This audio on the camera is not meant to be used anyway. So the nice thing is we see, these two clips right here have timecode that are very, very close in timecode, but we can assume that they're off the same timecode source because they're close enough, just one started later than the other. But what do we do about this guy? It's kind of tough because, these have timecode, DSLR starts at 0, and that doesn't help anybody. But let's take a look and see what happens when we right-click here. This option, Update Timecode from Audio LTC. So I don't know exactly what that means. Maybe that's left timecode in the left channel. I don't really know. But what I do know is if I click this and watch up here, when I click this, boom, it changes this, and the timecode is now semi-close to what we have here. So the next thing is if you're working with multiple cameras that are running off of one audio source, what you can do is you can highlight your camera and your audio source, right-click, auto sync audio based on timecode, and you click that and it will replace your camera audio with your recorded audio. So let me show you right here. Well, let me just drag this in. Well, you hear, yeah, gross, right? So let's delete that out. Highlight these two. This is the T3i and the Zoom F4. I'm going to right click, auto sync audio based on timecode. Drag this in. Motive microphone. It's an iOS microphone. Check out the. Pretty cool, huh? And so let me just move this down. Oops. I did not want to do that. Let me move this down to a mono channel so you're not just getting audio to the left side. Check out the review. It's a good one. So it automatically synced my F4 to my DSLR. Now, if we do this, let's just select that and select this one. Right click, auto sync audio based on timecode. Let's see what happens. Aha, look at that. This file has changed. And this is something really, really cool in Resolve 15. I believe this is beta 4. Used to, whenever you auto-synced, it would just rename your audio whatever your footage was, and that was super unhelpful because you never knew what, if you had your camera audio or if you had your recording audio. If something didn't sync right, there was just no way of knowing. But now they show you, here's your recorded audio, here's your camera name, and they're automatically linked. And so it automatically brings it all in together, and you can easily tell what's supposed to be what. My Shure NV88 Motive microphone. It's an iOS microphone. Check out the review. So pretty cool. Now the problem here comes in, what if I have this clip, I have the F4, and I have the Tentacle audio? What do I do? Because if you click this, highlight all of them, right click, based on timecode, well, it automatically went with the F4 audio. And I can right click this, and let's see, clip attributes, linked channel 1. Well, technically there should be a linked channel 2 and a linked channel 3 as well, because the Tentacle app records in dual mono for a mono source. And so it didn't sync my Tentacle app to the footage with the F4. So how do we deal with this? Well, luckily, like I said, in most cases, you're not going to have one video source and multiple audio sources that aren't the same recorder, that are recording the same source. Under normal circumstances, probably wouldn't have two audio recorders recording me where I would need to sync both of them up at the same time. But for the sake of example, let's just go with it. So what I'm going to do is I've got all of these selected, and this also is effective if you have multiple cameras that you're syncing off of one source. If everything has timecode and it all matches up, we just use a multicam timeline. And so what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to call this multicam example. Angle sync, we're going to go with timecode. Angle name, sequential. Detect clips from same camera, yeah, whatever. That's really not, none of this matters right now. Move source to original clips bin. I guess you could if you wanted to. I don't like that option, but to each their own. Let's click create. And we don't see anything, but that's how Resolve likes to deal with multicam. So what we see here is we have a multicam example that's a multicam clip per se, which is kind of like a nested sequence if you were in Premiere. But we take this, drag this into our timeline, and let's see what we got. All right, for the sake of example here, I'm actually recording into the Tentacle app. Okay, so how do we know what's what? Well, let's take this and right-click the multicam clip and open in timeline. And what that's going to do is right down here, it's going to open up in a kind of a sub-timeline. And now you can see where the camera started, where the F4 started, and where the Tentacle app started. And the problem here is that they're not all linked, but whenever you're dealing with multicam stuff, it's really not all that important. But let's take a listen to this. And Tentacle audio speeds. All right. Okay, so as you can see, right here we have our F4 audio already synced. Here we have the F4 audio synced again because I resynced it to the clip that was already synced, so it kind of doubled it up there, which is okay. And then we have our Tentacle app audio. For the sake of example here, I'm actually recording. And there's a little bit of delay. Like I said, I really think that that probably has something to do with the amount of delay coming into when the app records. But the nice thing is it doesn't link the clips, so it was literally off by 1 frame. So if you can take this and just shift it 1 frame here to the Tentacle app using my... Now you have all sorts of phase issues, which really is beside the point here. But as you can hear, the two microphones are synced up. V88 motive microphone. It's synced up exactly. So if you've got a clip, if you've got a scenario where you have one camera and multiple audio recorders that are all getting timecode, this is how you would sync all that. Now, I don't know, I imagine the protocol within Premiere is very, very similar. I haven't messed with it because I've really gotten away from Premiere because I love Resolve. I love having everything I want all in the same deal here. But that is how we would deal with adding timecode to your DSLR footage, or if you've got a camera that doesn't take timecode and you're running it in through the microphone input, this is how you're gonna apply that timecode and how you would sync it all. Okay, so I wasn't really planning on doing this because I've not used this tool that much. However, I'm gonna go ahead and do it anyway. So this is the Tentacle timecode tool. as if there's not enough T's in it already, the Tentacle Timecode tool. Say that 5 times fast. Or don't, I don't care. And one thing is with this tool, you have to have your Tentacle Sync, or at least a Tentacle Sync, plugged in via USB to unlock it. Otherwise, let me just close this out and I'll show you what I mean. So I've disconnected the Tentacle. Let's open it up. Oh no. Well, there's a new version available, but it's asking for a license key and an email and all this stuff that I really just don't even want to mess with. Now, you can buy this software if you want to, but it comes free with your, get a free device license. So that is that. Let's go ahead and look at their website. If we go here to support, it's Tentacle Sync .zendesk.com, at least that's their support page. We go to downloads. Here's where you're going to find all of your software. The Tentacle Sync Studio is the bomb. It's basically like Pluralize, but it's for timecode. It doesn't use the audio WAV files, so you get much better syncing regardless of the quality of your audio. But this is Mac OS only, and then you have your timecode tool, which is for Windows only. Yeah, it is what it is. But you also have your setup if you want to set up your Tentacle from your computer. I use my iPhone to set it up, and that seems to work really, really well. But those are alternative methods of processing your timecode once it is in your, once the file's on your hard drive. What I've got here this is the Windows software that they offer, and while I wish that they offered the same thing for Windows that they offered for Mac, which is like the Mac version's kind of like Pluralize for timecode, except instead of taking a chance on audio waveforms, it actually uses the timecode and spits out a synced timeline. That's pretty awesome. That's just not available on Windows right now. So, unless you go, obviously, the Resolve way or use Premiere or something like that. But let's take a look and see what this timecode tool does. So I've got my DSLR T3i footage right here. I'm going to go ahead and drop it in. And very first thing we see is that it says file timecode not found, which is fine. We didn't expect it because we heard that nasty grinding noise in the audio channel, but it does show audio timecode. It shows me the starting timecode at 2398 on channel 1, which is fine. So what does this do? Well, I wasn't exactly sure about it until I started playing around with it, and now pretty much what you do is you can highlight these files. If you have multiple DSLR files, you highlight it, click export. Don't forget. Okay, well, let me reboot this. I unplugged the device, and it does not like fighting with the drivers and the dongle stuff. So let's just fire this up again. Drop files here, and again, same thing. So I'm going to select this. It's a nice bright orange. I love the orange on everything, by the way. I'm going to select export, and I'm going to go to browse. This project I've just got saved on my desktop right now. Just go to the Tentacle example, TTT file for Tentacle Timecode tool. Select folder, and right now this is set to pass through. So you've got these MXF options, MPEG-2, DNxHD, QuickTime pass-through, and then regular QuickTime DNxHD versions. I haven't used any of these because I just don't know how long that would take, and like I said, I use Resolve for adding my timecode, but let's just try the pass-through, and obviously this is one clip that's 3 minutes, so let's see how this does. This is coming from an SSD and going to an SSD, so let's just click export. Boom, Tentacle did the job. That was pretty fast. It's not bad. So that might be a good way to do this if you're passing the footage off to another, to a post house or something like that, where you're not going to have the control to actually do the timecode yourself. So you could load a bunch of files in there, pass it through, and so there's our TTT file folder. It's got the exact same name. So let's go back into Resolve here, and that shot automatically shows up. And so I'm just going to drag this down here, and it looks like something happened with my Resolve. Let me save this. I'm going to restart Resolve, and I'll be back in just a second. Okay, so I'm back, and I've got Resolve rebooted. Yeah, I guess whenever my computer went to sleep last night, Resolve lost the driver for my graphics card, yada, 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 yada. Doesn't really matter. So, as you can see, I dragged the file in from my window over here, my TTT file, and I bring it in and it automatically has the timecode embedded, which is pretty cool. And as far as I can tell, this is the original file right here. H.264, 23976, 1920 by 1080, linear PCM 4800, 2-channel, yeah, pretty much that. And if I click this one, it literally has all the same settings. So I don't know how they do it, but it just burns your time code into the footage somehow using magical tentacle voodoo, and your footage automatically has the timecode burned in. But there's something else really cool about this. So let me go ahead and open this up. Watch your ears. Actually, I do see a bit of a color shift if you see those two. So may not be the best way to go, but it's there if you want to use it. So this is the original. Yeah, awful. It's awful audio. So let's listen to this one. Zoom audio speeds. And so what they did is they gave us a mono track with just the scratch audio. So they took the timecode audio out of the embedded audio, which is kind of nice. That way you don't put your headphones on and accidentally have the volume turned up and run this grinding noise into your ear. Yeah, it's awful. I've made that mistake. You don't want to do that. So anyway, that is the Tentacle Timecode tool. It seems pretty good. I would like to test this with some different footage just to see if the color shift is still there, because that's pretty significant. Looks like a gamma shift more than anything, but definitely definitely a difference. And let's just go back to the first frame. Make sure that it's the same. Make sure we're looking at the same frame here and here. Yeah, bit of a gamma shift it looks like between the two files. So I would like to see this on a more robust codec like ProRes or DNX to see if that makes any changes there. But that is the Tentacle Timecode tool. And let's get back to the review. So this has been a fairly in-depth review on the Tentacle Sync System. This is specifically the Tentacle E. One thing I neglected to mention that they gave us were these really cool microfiber lens cloths, or I guess you could wipe your tentacle off with it. Don't take that the wrong way. But you've got the tentacle unit, it's Bluetooth, it's time code for guys who can't really afford time code. And they're a great company, it's a great product, it's an affordable product, and you need to add it to your arsenal, because once you do, you won't know how you live without it.